Hey, welcome to Dialogues About Death with Chris Miller. Hi, Chris.
Good morning.
It's so
Happy
nice to
Friday,
see.
everybody.
Yes, it's so nice to see you again. You look so festive in your red.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, today our topics on Dialogues About Death is burials versus cremations.
Yeah.
So, again, a little housekeeping. If anyone has any questions on these topics, Chris loves to answer questions live. So, we hope that you'll
Yeah.
write them in the comments. And if you have any comments or anything, or if you think this is interesting to someone in your life, if you could share it with them, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, again, we're going to get started because we have so many questions that were submitted for today.
Wonderful.
So, yes. So again, is there anything you want to say to start the show, Chris? I've just been starting to go straight for it.
No, we've been on a couple episodes now, and it's amazing the people that been able to outreach. I've had people coming up to me and saying, "Wow, that I've been able to tune in or check it on a replay," and so it's just an amazing how I'm being able to touch and just hopefully educate people out there.
Exactly. Well, yay. Well, that's our intention of this because I think
Yeah.
sometimes people are afraid to talk about this subject, but
Yeah.
it does happen to everyone. So we have to prepare for it. We have to know how to deal with it. And if it's a loved one or if it's a friend or someone you work with and you don't really know how to, these are the kind of questions we want to help answer.
Absolutely.
Also, I wanted to say, um, I guess a thank you for inviting me, Chris. But I don't know if the general public knows this, but one of the things that you do for your families is you have the holiday memorial service, and it was just this past Sunday. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we started this tradition about 15 years ago or so, where we started to invite all the families that we serve over the past 12 months back for a holiday service because we know everybody's first Christmas and even all the holidays for the first year after you've lost a loved one is kind of tough. So we
Right.
just want to let them know that they weren't in it alone. And by bringing together all the families, they all shared something in common. All those people that were sitting in our chapel last Sunday, and we have a nice little service of remembrance, and we have an opportunity to just bring the people back outside just coming to a funeral. And then also we give them a little takeaway. We give them an ornament with their loved one's name on that, so then they could take that home and place it on their Christmas tree, so then they know there's a little piece of their loved one around the Christmas tree with them.
I love that. And it was
Yeah.
so amazing that what you said there was so important. You told everybody in the room, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Everyone in this room has lost someone this year, and this your holidays are going to be the hardest, but we want to bring you together to know you're not alone, and two,
Yeah.
that we're here for you. And
Absolutely.
even though you had your service here for your loved one, we're always here for you. And it was so touching. And then people actually came up with their ornament, and you took pictures of it, of
Yeah.
them in front of your beautiful tree and the beautiful flowers that were there. So it meant a lot to me, and I hadn't lost anyone in my family this year, so it was just really special. So on behalf of the community, thank you for doing that, Chris.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure, and my staff loves doing it too. We weren't able to do it the last couple of years with everything going on in the world, and when the staff says, "Boss, can we bring it back again?" I said, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do it." And they all came together and band together, and it was really high. It's always a highlight to our year.
Yeah, yeah, your staff is amazing. They had from the programs, checking everybody in to make sure they felt welcome, to afterwards when there was the refreshments right outside the
Yeah,
door with that was lovely. And even I even had a few children there, and they were enjoying the cookies. So that was
yeah,
that was
yeah.
really fun. Awesome. All right, well, let's get to the topic today. Again, we're talking about the difference between burials versus death, because there's
Sure.
that is a choice. And again, today we're going to be answering questions about embalming and what's required, and if there's regulations, what happens to
Yeah.
someone when they're left in your care. So again, we're going to be talking about a lot. So if you are here live, in fact, I see we have someone here. Oh, Keisha's here. Yay!
Morning, Keisha.
I love
Hello.
it. Keisha is one of Chris's team members, and she helps with everything at Thomas Miller. So I'm so excited she's
Wonderful.
here. Okay, let's get right into it. So,
You
what
bet.
happens when someone's loved one is put into your care?
Sure. When a family elects to choose us for their funeral provider, we bring their loved one into our care, and we kind of put an area. It's a holding area that we kind of it's a refrigerated area, and then At that time, when the family comes in to make their arrangements, we ask them, what their wishes are when it comes to what we call a final disposition. Final disposition is the ends means to the funeral service. So either
Okay.
people are going to be buried or they're going to be cremated. Some people will have a full elaborate funeral service prior to that. Some people can just keep it very simplified with just a direct burial or a basic cremation. So
Okay.
we need to let them know, it's like, what's in their heart of wanting to do for their loved ones. Sometimes it's tradition. Maybe everybody's been buried in their family for generations and they want to do burial. Um,
Okay.
Cremation has become more popular because people think it's a little bit more economical, which it can be. And so
Okay.
people are wanting to do cremation. It can save them costs because they don't have to deal with a cemetery. Also, when somebody can be cremated, they can bring the cremated remains home with their loved one. So people are a little bit more transient, like moving around. They haven't really settled in where they want to live.
Okay.
Maybe they'll bring the ashes home with them and decide maybe in the future what they want to do with them, if they want to inter them in a cemetery or scatter them at sea and other
Oh,
options like that.
okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so you kind of walk them through what they need to do and what they
Mhm.
have the options to do, which is great. So when someone is if someone chooses burial,
Yes.
they I guess they have a choice. Do they have a choice if they're embalmed or not?
They do. So embalming is only required in at least our state of California. Embalming is required if there's going to be an open casket with a public viewing. So
Oh,
that's the only time embalming is required. Other
okay.
than that, another time that we have to do embalming possibly is when we're shipping someone out of the state or internationally. Then embalming takes place.
Oh,
So then we
okay.
can go ahead and transfer that person to another state if they're having to go on to an airlines or a train or a boat or something like that. So
Okay.
that would be a time where embalming would be required. If someone is wanting a closed casket burial with no public viewing, then embalming is not required. We can just do a bathing and a washing and then prepare the body with the clothing of their choice and place them in a casket. And then it could be as simple as that.
Okay.
So embalming is only required, as I mentioned, only if it's going to be an open public casket.
Okay. That's good to know. And because a lot of people have asked, like they don't want to ask, but they want to know what
Yes.
is involved in an embalming because it's kind of like a vague word.
Sure. So embalming is a process where we remove the body fluid such as blood from the body and we replace it with a formaldehyde solution.
Okay.
So in a normal circumstance, if someone dies just a natural normal death, the procedure usually takes anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. And what we do is we use the arterial system as our avenue of embalming. So what
That
we
would
would
be
do,
your veins, the
that is
arterial
correct.
system. Okay.
Your arterial system would be your arteries and your veins. And so what we use is we use that system within your body to do the embalming. So what
Okay.
we would do is we would make an incision up here at the carotid artery and the jugular vein up here by the clavicle. We
Okay.
open that up and we find the vein and the artery there. And then what we do is we introduce the solution at that point. So we can introduce the solution into the artery and then we drain all the fluid out of the vein. And so that process takes place as we're doing it. And so what the formaldehyde solution does is it links the molecules together to inhibit or prohibit any decomposition. So it kind of puts your body in a suspended animation. So
Oh,
it
wow.
doesn't it doesn't allow your body to decompose as rapidly, which is the natural process of when something dies, it starts to break down and decompose. So the
Okay.
embalming stops that temporarily. Doesn't stop it forever, but it stops it long enough so then we can do a viewing or a visitation or have closure for a family.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's great.
Now,
That's
so
yeah.
and that's normal. But now, if somebody has been autopsied, if somebody had a private autopsy or there was a circumstance where the person had to be autopsied, and the person was opened up for an autopsy, then the process can take a lot longer. It could take anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 hours to do an autopsy embalming because we have since they've torn open the arterial system with the autopsy, they've cut all the vessels within the body. So that means we have to embalm each part separately. So it takes a lot longer.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And would
So it's
the
like,
autopsy team come to your facility, or would it be done at like a police facility and then they would bring it back?
yeah, so there's a couple places. There's a lot of autopsies are done at the coroner's office. So that's done by law enforcement. So like we have one, every county has their own like facility where they would do autopsies. Then there
Okay.
are some private autopsy companies that families can hire them to come in to do a private autopsy. And that could be a topic we could talk about later on. And then
Okay.
there are also pathologists that are like traveling pathologists that will come to a funeral home and do private autopsies on site. So there's a lot of different options.
Okay.
It's not done regularly. It's
Okay.
maybe, 3 to 5% of the bodies are autopsies. There's not that many coming through our facility. So we might do anywhere from 3 to 6 autopsied embalmings in a month at our volume. So maybe like 1 or 2 a week, possibly.
Okay. And would someone hire someone like that or go through that process if they want to know, like if they had cancer, that where the
Yes.
cancer started or
Mhm.
something like that?
That's correct. So if a family hires a private pathologist, maybe they're looking because the person had Alzheimer's or they had a heart disease or something like that. They can have a private pathologist come in and do a private exam and a private autopsy, and then do all the toxicology and all the examination and stuff, and do all the lab work to come up with some sort of a conclusion. If the family wasn't happy with what their regular doctor prescribed as their cause of death,
Right.
or maybe they weren't happy with what the coroner's office in their investigation, they weren't happy with the cause. So a family can always hire their own private one if they want to.
Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, I'm so glad you
Yeah,
said that because that's something I would have wanted for my mom, and we didn't
sure,
get that. So, by
sure.
the way, we have Becky who came on. Good morning, Becky. So glad you're
Morning, Becky.
here, and also Chris from Carson City.
Wow.
So that's exciting. Do you know
Nice.
Chris?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Hold on, there he is.
Oh yeah, Christmas Sarah.
Yes.
Chris, morning.
Very cool. So nice to have friends come on. Again, if anyone has questions, make sure you put them in the comments and we'll bring them up
Sure.
and answer them for you. So that was very interesting, Chris. Thank you so much.
You
I've
bet.
always wondered that, never asked. So thank you. Okay, so the other question is, and you might have answered this already, but a question that came in was,
Sure.
does a body have to be embalmed if it's going to be buried? And you said no.
No.
Does a body have to be embalmed if it's going to be cremated?
No. A body
Okay.
only needs to be embalmed if there's going to be a public viewing.
Oh,
So
that's right.
if there's going to be a public viewing before a cremation, then yes, the body must be embalmed. But in most cases, bodies do not have to be embalmed if they're being cremated with no viewing.
Okay.
We do allow what we call private ID viewings because we find it important that someone, the family, if they want to have closure, they want to see their loved one. And if it's just 1 or 2 immediate family members, they can come in for like a short amount of time, like a 5 or 10 minute period. And we'll just do a bathing and washing and a disinfection of the body before they come in to see their loved one. But it's only
Okay.
for a short amount of time prior to the
Sure.
cremation or the burial.
That's understandable. So really the embalming is just so because it preserves the body
Yeah,
longer.
that is correct. It temporarily preserves the body so we can have a viewing. It also like does a disinfection, so it inhibits any like viruses and diseases to be spread also. So it inhibits that. So it's a safer environment for people to come around that person after they've died.
I love that. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you so much. I really appreciate that
you bet.
information. Okay, so the process of a burial. So we're going to talk about both burials and cremation.
Sure.
So the process, obviously, we mentioned if they're going to be embalmed or not, but after that, so when people
Yeah.
decide to use your service, I'm assuming they bring in the clothes that they would like their loved one to be dressed in. So tell me the process again, either way,
Yeah.
if they're embalmed or not, what would happen?
Sure, sure. So after a family's decided if they want to use burial, and if they have their cemetery, which most families have probably have a cemetery property because they've done burial for generations, and they've probably used a local cemetery within our region here in Riverside County.
Okay.
Then we will then work with that cemetery and coordinating the times and dates for when we're doing the service at the funeral home or church, and then going out to the cemetery for the burial. The
Okay.
family at some point will have to go to the cemetery, sign some papers and documents, take care of the fees at the cemetery separately from us. Um, and so that would be one situation. But if a family doesn't have cemetery property, then it's up to them where they'd like to go. So this could be the first time they're doing a burial in their family. And so we kind of let them know all those different cemeteries in our area. And then they can go and kind of just go out and do their own research and reconnaissance of going out there and finding which one feels comfortable for them.
Okay.
Also, we're really fortunate that we're near the Riverside National Cemetery, which is a national cemetery for our veterans and their spouses.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
and that cemetery, it's a privilege for the veteran and their spouse to be buried, and the benefit is they get to be buried there for free. So that
Right.
can save thousands of dollars to a veteran and his spouse or their
Yes.
spouse. When it
My
comes to a
parents are buried there.
yeah, so they get
Yeah.
a free grave, a free vault liner, they get a free headstone, and the veteran would also we would coordinate military honors for a veteran. So that's only at the National Cemetery, and they do that for burial and cremated remains for an urn.
Oh, okay.
So they
That's
have
good
that
to
option
know.
at the National Cemetery. They can do either. And again, when a family is choosing burial, they just deal directly with the cemetery, and then we'll help coordinate the times and location of when that time occurs.
That's nice. You've mentioned that last time on the show about how that's part of your service, that because
Yeah.
when someone's in the time of grief, like it's you're kind of walking in a fog,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And you don't know what to do, and there might be a list of things to do, and but you guys handle all of that. Like you coordinate, like you said, if it's military honors, all the things, the 21 gun salute or the,
Yep.
people coming or the flyover, whatever it is, like that
Yeah.
is so helpful that you can do that for people and all the other details that you again, we talked about in the last show, but I'm so appreciative of that someone that I've dealt with that a lot. It's
Mhm.
so nice because there's a lot of cemeteries that don't do that, Chris. So, um, I really appreciate what you guys do, which
Oh,
is
you
awesome.
bet.
Okay.
Thank you.
So they bring in their clothes they want. And
Yep.
do they bring in shoes?
Shoot, we tell them to bring in whatever they feel comfortable. So yes, we put on shoes or boots. A lot of people just elect to putting on maybe socks or slippers. But if people like to wear their sneakers or a favorite pair of high heels, we will put shoes on someone.
That's awesome. Oh,
Yeah,
we also have Sherilyn visiting with us. That's so awesome, Sherilyn. If you have
I can't. The one's so small I can't see it on my screen.
that's okay.
Welcome.
You don't have to. That's all I'm
Welcome.
here for. That's what I'm here
Okay.
for. So thank you for joining us, Sherilyn. I love it. Okay. So again, you could bring anything you want. And
Yes.
I know this sounds weird, but I'm assuming people don't bring jewelry. Like they'd want to keep the jewelry as at least I would. You'd want to
Yeah.
keep the
So
remembrance.
So there's different ways how we handle jewelry. People sometimes wear glasses and they want certain jewelry on. There are certain jewelry that they want on temporarily just during the viewing, and then we would remove it and give it back to the family. Or
Oh,
sometimes people will just do costume jewelry that's not valued a lot, but mom always had rings on every finger and stuff. So we will put jewelry on if that's something that they're used to seeing, and we just need to make special notes and accommodations for that if that's the case. We don't recommend putting a lot of expensive jewelry on anybody. Um, we were we prefer if they want to do more like a costume jewelry or just little knickknacks and stuff.
yeah, yeah. Because I would, for me, I would want to have that. I have
Yeah,
rings that my mom wore that I like
that's
wearing.
right.
So
Yeah, those
to
things are
remember.
sentimental. They should be passed down to the family.
Yeah, that's nice. But if someone is being choosing to be cremated,
Yes.
they don't need that, right? They don't need the clothes or anything.
Well, if there's a viewing prior to cremation, we would traditionally dress them just as if it was a burial or just
Right.
with a viewing service.
Okay.
But if somebody's being cremated, they can just be wrapped in a shroud and just be wrapped in like a sheet or a blanket and then just cremated. So there's no
Okay.
special circumstances with that. And if people do have any sort of jewelry, we would remove that because we don't want to cremate anything. We would just put it in their cremated remains afterwards. So we
Okay.
keep it separate.
Okay. So you would
So,
give it to
so
them separately from the ashes, or would you
yeah,
put it
say they
in the
wanted it with their loved ones. So we would remove it and then put it back into the urn with their ashes. So we don't,
Oh,
if they have a bunch of jewelry on, we would don't, because the jewelry, it just all melts down into a big wad and it gets
yeah.
all into their ashes. So what we do is we prefer just removing it, keeping it in a separate little baggie, and then we put it in with the ashes. So then it's in the ashes afterwards.
Okay.
That's how
Okay.
we do it at our crematory.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you had mentioned too that there is after cremation, you just mentioned putting it back in, but what are the options for the remains? I think you called it a disposition.
Disposition. Yes.
Yeah, so what are the
So
options after
there's
you
this
get cremated?
So, and we have to, when during our consultation time with families, and if they say, oh, we'd like our loved one to be cremated, then also we need to find out what their final disposition is. And this would be the final place where they plan on putting the ashes. And it could be at their home. So that means we would put the address on all the documents. It could be a cemetery of their choice. They could
Okay.
be scattered in the state of California. They can be scattered at sea, but it has to be 500 yards off the coast. So in
Oh,
California, we don't have any inlet waters. So any lake really in the state of California by the state looking at it should not be allowed to scatter. But when people bring ashes into their own possessions, it's in their own possession. So we can't control what people do with their ashes personally,
right.
but what we do is we outline with them. They can take them home. They can put them in a cemetery. They can scatter them at the sea, and also we can make. We have smaller keepsakes or jewelry mementos. Also, like blown glass keepsakes, or also like a diamond somebody could be made out of. So those are different options that people can use their cremated remains as memorials when it comes to the jewelry and keepsakes, and then also different dispositions throughout the state. People may want to travel with them. They can travel with them out of state, but we just need to put it on the documents that they're traveling with them, or we can ship them back to their homeland. So we ship ashes internationally around the world back
Wow.
to, yeah, we ship them back to the Philippines. We ship them back to the Middle East, to Asia. So
So
we
they're
ship
like
ashes.
in a special packaging that's labeled
That is
of what
correct.
it
So what
is.
we would do is we would put them in the urn of their choice, and then we have to label it, and it says cremated remains, and we ship those in the U.S. Postal Service. Will ship those internationally.
Okay, okay, that's awesome. But why? Why do remains have to be labeled?
It's just for so then they know to take special care of
Okay.
them.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just put
Oh,
there's a label that says cremated remains, and we put those on labels on the box just so they take special care.
okay. That's lovely. I had no
Yeah.
idea. You always wonder, do they think it's like anthrax or
Yeah,
something?
so
I don't
that's why
know.
we do label them, and we have to
Yeah.
disclose what they are and what the
Okay.
container is and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've actually met some of your staff in your different locations, and they have showed me. In fact, we have some video that we're going to be sharing on this topic. So that's why we're talking about this today,
All right.
because you have such an amazing selection from all types of urns in different materials: metal,
Yeah.
wood,
Yeah.
ceramic. There's also themed urns. So
Yeah.
I saw like there's ones that are shaped like boots or shaped like different things, and when I was at your La Sierra location, they said that people can also bring in their container. And one
Yes.
gentleman loved tequila. He had a favorite kind of tequila. And so they brought in an empty bottle of that kind of tequila,
Yep.
and you guys put the remains in that. And
Yep.
is that something that happens a lot where people bring in their own thing?
Yeah, it happens. Oh, maybe 10 to 20% of the time, people will bring in their own type of little special memento, or maybe something that's been passed down, or something that they made from scratch. I remember one
Oh,
time there was a gentleman. He loved making bird houses,
oh,
and he would make these beautiful bird houses. And when his wife passed away, he created a special bird house, and he enclosed it also. There were no openings, but he made it to an urn, but to look like a birdhouse.
that's
And
so
we
sweet.
we hired him for a while, and he probably made about a dozen for us, and we sold them over the years of
Oh,
one of a kind special birdhouse urns.
that's so
Yeah,
sweet. Well, I did
yeah,
notice that in your keepsake room, you have lots of different options. And
yes,
I think you had a couple other, you had some local artists that created different containers. So there's so
Yep.
much to pick from. So when somebody does come in, they can actually look. And then you also have little mini urns. So if someone
Hmm.
wants to give a little bit of the remains to each of their children or grandchildren, that's an option.
Yeah.
And you mentioned briefly about there's jewelry that you can make diamonds out of the ashes. It takes a little
Absolutely.
while, right, to create that, but if
It does.
and also like they have these beautiful like spun glass that you could put a light underneath and it glows. I mean,
Yeah.
that is amazing.
It's the options are really endless when it comes to cremation and the memorialization that you can use to allow that person's life to come through the art and the monument you want to put together for their loved one. So it's really
Yeah,
kind of a cool thing. You can make
yeah,
it very personalized and very customized.
yeah. That's awesome. I know something else that I know some people might think is weird, but I think it's kind of fascinating because every time someone is comes into your care, you do give their fingerprint for
Yes.
records, right? Which it follows them
Yep.
through the whole process, so someone knows that they're never out of your care. So there's a
That
way
is
to
correct.
track them in your facility. But
Yep.
also, what's neat is you can have jewelry made out of those fingerprints, right?
Yeah. So that's just and a person can, since we take the thumbprints prior, it could be for a family for burial or cremation, but they're
Okay.
nice, beautiful little lockets, and they also have other keepsakes. We can make keychains. Uh, there's also like money clips, cufflinks, little pendants. There's all sorts of things that
Yeah.
people can do with the thumbprint jewelry, and it can be turned in a week or two. So some families we can even have them ready, maybe possibly for the day of the service, so then they can wear their loved one around their neck.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
sweet, or at least a
absolutely.
representation of.
It
Yeah.
is.
But yeah, I've heard of that too, where you put a little bit of ashes in jewelry as
Yep.
well. So the
Yep.
thumbprint wouldn't be the ashes, it would just be
Be the
the
person's
thumbprint.
thumbprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, Chris is said that Chris, you're gonna make him come out of retirement. He's probably
Nice.
is he also a funeral director?
He used to we used to use him as our crematory operator. So we would take all of, before I put my own crematory in, we used to go to Chris and he did all our cremations for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Chris, there's so much exciting going in the industry that you got to come back.
Absolutely. If he wants a part-time job, he can come back to work part-time.
Did you hear
Sure.
that, Chris? You
There
just
you
got a job
go.
offer. I love it. There's a benefit to come on the dialogues
There you
about that.
go.
I love that. Okay, so we still have a few more minutes and we also have
Okay.
some more questions. So, some other questions that came in. Oh, we've talked about the processes. Are there any rules or regulations when it comes to the cemeteries? And again, you're not affiliated with any, so they can
Yeah.
choose their own. But are there any rules or regulations that people need to be aware of?
Sure. So depending on the and when you go to a cemetery, if you're being buried, there's actually two ways to be, two dispositions at a cemetery. You could either be buried in a ground, or you could be entombed into a crypt or mausoleum above the ground. So
Oh,
if somebody's being buried above the ground and into a crypt or a mausoleum, sometimes cemeteries will have a rule that that they do require embalming, even though there may not be of viewing.
okay,
If the person is being put out of ground above ground, they
okay,
may have to be embalmed. So we have to check with the cemetery. Sometimes they might have certain restrictions. They also
okay,
sometimes have restrictions when it comes to like headstone placements, of how the size of the headstone, if it how high or how wide or how big it can be.
okay,
Um, so sometimes we have to check with the cemetery. Also, when it comes to timing, there could be, unfortunately, two people buried in the same area on the same day. So sometimes when it comes to timing, we may have to stagger that to making sure
okay,
that everybody gets their own time to have closure. So
right,
we work with every cemetery in Southern California. And so what we do is sometimes they have rules and regulations when it comes to what we call an outer burial container or a vault. If a
okay,
casket is going in the ground, it has to go into an outer burial container or a vault. And that protects the weight of the earth from caving the casket in. So sometimes cemeteries
oh,
have certain requirements, minimum requirements for the type of vault that is being used also. So we need to call the cemetery and say, what's your minimum requirement? Sometimes the family can get a vault through us. Sometimes they have to can only get them through the cemetery, but we'll
oh,
assist the family in doing those things also.
okay, that's awesome. Well, since you guys have been around a little while, You're actually
Yeah.
the oldest business in Corona, California,
Yeah.
since
Yes.
1891.
91.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, just a couple years ago. You probably have relationship with all the cemeteries. You know what their rules are, so you can help the family with that decision.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's another benefit of a local community family-owned funeral
Mhm.
home is that you have relationships with all of these, and
Absolutely.
you know who to talk to, and I think they always say who you know matters. So that's really great.
It does.
Um,
Building relationships, it helps a lot.
exactly. That's awesome. Okay, and then well, we're this was running a little late, so we don't want to go into too many stories. But
Sure.
the last question that we had was: are there any requirements for specific religions in regards to burial or cremation? If they have something to have a
Sure.
rule.
Yeah. So what when again when we're meeting with families and talking to them about the consultation time of putting their services together, if they have special needs, which there are some religious customs and cultures that require to have burial within a 24 to 48 hour period. Some of them require the family come in and do either a bathing or a dressing prior to their services. So we work with the family. We try to work those needs out. And the thing is, when it comes to a short time frame, if it's cremation, since we own and operate our own crematory, we can pretty much accommodate most of those cultures' needs in getting something done and expedited, as long as we get all of our proper documentation, the permits and death certificate done in a timely manner. But we also have to work with the cemeteries, and if the cemeteries are working with other mortuaries, also we have to work with them. So timing
Okay.
wise, might be a little bit more challenging if we're doing a burial at a cemetery, because we have to work with that cemetery too to make sure we can accommodate those families' needs if they have time restrictions in regards of getting their loved one buried or cremated in a timely manner.
Okay, that's great. And then what's
Yeah.
nice is because you have your crematory on site, if the because I know that was it Buddhist or Tao, like what was it that they have to come into the crematory and they have to prepare the body in a certain way?
Yeah, so a lot of our Buddhist and Hindu families, they like to do a little ceremony prior, and then they like to do like what we call a witness cremation. So they have a ceremony where they'll kind of escort the casket to our crematory from our chapel, and then they do the insertion of the casket into the machine and into the retort, and then they always have some sort of a ceremony where like the eldest child or the spouse will push the ignition button to kind of start the cremation process. So, and we try
Okay,
to accommodate all their cultural needs, um, which makes it feel very good for themselves because they feel like they're participating and being part of it, and we
right.
respect and honor all those cultural things that they do.
Yeah, that's so great. That's
Yeah.
so nice because I think a lot of times, as we've had some comments today, this is information is so important, Chris, because again, people get kind of weird about this because they don't know. And when it's talked about, it takes a little bit of the stigma away
Yep.
from it.
Takes the edge off.
And it's okay. It's okay to feel weird about it. It's okay. But it's nice to know that you're available to answer those questions and
Yes.
be open about it. Because again, you deal
That's
with it
right.
every day, and a lot of us don't.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, so we're at the close of our show. Chris, is there anything else? I know we're coming into Christmas coming up and New Year's,
Well,
and we haven't announced the dates for the coming in January, but we will be doing that shortly. But is there anything
yes.
you want to say to our community for the end of the year for Christmas?
Sure. I just want to say that we'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year's, and we put blessings upon all of you out there. I know this isn't an easy time for many of you going through your first year of a loss of a loved one, but let you know that we're here for you. If you have questions or needs, feel free to reach out to any of our locations. If you have questions, we're here for you. We I will be traveling a little bit in the month of January, so I know we may only be able to get one show in January, but we're going to be putting that on the calendar here in the next couple of days and let you all know so we'll keep things rolling because I enjoy sharing my experiences that I've had over the last 30 years of funeral service. And again, any of you have questions, feel free to sign them in, write them in, write about a topic, and we'd love to tell you everything we know about, so then you are a better formed consumer.
Yeah, I love it. And if you again also have any questions, there's a lot of information at thomasmillermortuary.com. And so you can get a lot of your questions answered there.
Great.
But again, the staff is available anytime. I put the phone numbers up for our local Corona chapter or chapel, I should say,
Yep.
which is 951-737-3244, and the La Sierra Memorial chapter, which is in Riverside, which is 951-687-0551. So
Yeah,
hopefully if anyone has any questions on that. But again, Chris, thank you again for being so open and
you bet.
frank with our audience. And I wish you a Merry Christmas as well. I know
Thank
that
you.
the new year is going to be amazing. We're
Yes, it
looking
will.
forward to the glorious new year. So,
Amen.
um, all right. Awesome. Okay. So we're heading out. We'll see you guys in January. And as Chris said, if you have any questions or any topics we'd like us to cover in the new year, please put them in the comments and we'll circle back. Oh, we do have a few more people who made some comments. I love that. Oh, blessings received, says Sherilyn. I love it.
Oh,
And
thank you.
Cheryl Vogel Druette
Oh,
said,
nice.
have used Thomas Miller several times. They're very professional and she would use them again for sure. I love that.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Cheryl.
That's nice. And then Denise Wolf said, thank you, Chris. Great information.
All right.
And Sherilyn also said, great interview. I love it. They had so many. It's so nice to see everybody here on live. But if you're watching this in the replay, you could actually write replay. And then if you have any questions, so we can come back and answer them.
Absolutely.
So that is so awesome. All right, Chris. Again,
Great.
Merry Christmas, and we'll see you guys in the new year. All right.
See you in 2024. Bye
Oh my
bye.
goodness. Can you believe it's going to happen? Oh my goodness. All
Right.
right. Have a great day.
Bye
Bye.
bye.